All right, Alysha, thank you so much for being here today. I really, really appreciate you. I
Thank you
wanted to,
for having me.
yes, I love it. I love it. I'm excited. I'm super excited to have you because today we're going to be talking a lot about co-parenting, and that's like right in up your alley, right? And so for me, co-parenting is so important. I think it's a lot of people, especially in high conflict divorce, which is what I coach many women. I think a lot of divorces are high conflict. Co-parenting is just essential, right? And so for those of you guys that don't know Alysha, I'm going to just say a little bit about her and then I'll have you kind of come in.
Yeah.
You're an author of It's Not Complicated, a self-guided, a self-help guided guide for mothers, right? You're a co-parenting coach. You're a mom. I saw that of a 17-year-old. Yes.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I have teenagers. I have a 19-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 4-year-old. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, I'm all over the place. And you're the founder of the Price Dynamic, which is building co-parenting practices. So thank you again for being
Yeah.
here.
Yeah,
Want to just share a little bit about yourself and what kind of got you into this whole world of co-parenting?
for sure. So, yes, I am a mother. And fundamentally, that is what gave me this push and this fire. It's kind of like you have to have gone through these things yourself to really get it and to have the right type of empathy and to be vulnerable in the way that people who really need your support can receive you. And so for me, I also grew up in a co parenting household. So I understand the dynamic from a couple of different lenses. And it was important after having worked in social services that were supporting families in underserved communities. For over 20 years, I just recognized more and more that there was this gap in what it took to stabilize families from the core, right? So there were so many organizations and still are that are doing amazing work, but it's really surface and people may assume or think, oh my gosh, Alysha, how is like finding a home or finding employment surface? But those things can come and go. And we all know that, especially with the way COVID has hit us all. Nothing is promised. And if you don't have a solid foundation in terms of your family or your village and the ways that bounce back, the strong support that you need, having a home and having a job doesn't mean much, right? We've learned, over the past, I don't know, 6 months or so, how important it is to have family and how important it is um, to, when all of these things are stripped away from us, what do you have, right? And so that was just kind of, this pressing issue for me. It was just eating at me, like, how do I help, do something that hasn't really been done, especially in the community that I'm from. And that just started, this burning desire to support people around what it meant to transition from being considered a single parent to effectively and cooperatively co-parenting. Or if you're not going to be co-parenting with your with the biological parent, how do you access your village? And how do you humble yourself and work through um, what didn't necessarily work or what could have happened better or differently? How do you work through that so that you're healed and ready to take on what parenting looks like?
Right.
And so all of that was really on my heart. And I just decided that I had enough experience, life experience, professional experience to kind of pull that all together and jump off the ledge and start to support other people.
Mm.
And that helped me to create the Price Dynamic.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Were you always, was it volatile in the beginning with with dad? Were you guys always like on the same page with raising
You
your son?
know, I've been privileged in the sense that we actually had a solid friendship
Mm.
prior to having a relationship and then prior to becoming parents. So I'm always transparent about the fact that I've known him and we were friends since we were in the fourth grade.
Wow.
And so we had a core, a really strong foundation in terms of knowing each other and a mutual respect for each other. However, that did not stop the relationship as kind of boyfriend and girlfriend from going sour, right? Expectations, grow and they change, especially when you become parents. So there were many times that we did not see eye to eye. There were many times that I did not like him. There were several times that I was grateful to God. I'll be transparent that I did not have a firearm because I couldn't promise.
Transparency, yeah.
Like that feeling where you're just like, oh my gosh, thank God.
Yeah.
Right. But to be away with the jokes, it was tough. It was really tough in the beginning. Because I own the fact that when I became a mother, the things that I cared about were very different. And I am so clear that I was no longer the girlfriend that would let certain things ride. It was kind of like, I'm doing this for my child and myself. And this is the vision I have for my family. And it became really clear when my son was probably about 1.5 years that our visions weren't aligned. Yeah. And that was a struggle. It was definitely a struggle. There are times I realized that I had to hold the belief for what our family could become. And I stuck in there until I was able to pass that belief on to him. But it was not easy.
Right.
It was not easy. One of the things that I'm able to really share with a lot of the women that I speak with and do coaching with is that while I may seem polished and I've written a book and started an organization and on and on and on, I'm still that girl that was hurt. I'm still the girl who argued with other women when I found out about infidelities. I have enough of those types of experiences personally, so that when people share things with me, I'm not shocked, right? I know it, I get it. And I think that's what allows me to be impactful, that sometimes I'm able to go deep and share things that people would say, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened to you or that you went through that. And that I think is really what it's about is, being able to make sure that people know they're not in it alone.
Right.
But by no means was it easy to get here.
Not easy. I don't think any of the divorce process or
No.
parenting or single parenthood none of it is easy.
No.
But I think it's interesting because my situation is sort of the same. My ex and I, our families have known each other our entire lives. So we both come from Italian families. Our parents knew each other since we were little kids. Oh. And you hit sort of like the nail on the head when you said that you had a sort of mutual respect for each other, because our situation was not. It was very hostile. It was very high conflict. Co-parenting was a challenge at most of the time, all the way through. My oldest is now 19. So we had tried for even through the courts to have court counselors. And what would you tell people that come into the Price dynamic, because you're actually physically co-parenting, right, in an office right now?
Yep.
Now let's just say someone in my situation, what my situation was, I divorced 8 years ago, where you have these high conflict parents where ego and pride is involved and where they're sort of cemented in winning, right? Yeah. Or being right. And so what are some tools what would you tell somebody that's going through that right now, right? You're sitting with this couple where they're just not budging and they don't want to hear about it.
Yep. The most important thing is, and I love that you mentioned where they're interested in winning. Because most people come into it with that. And when you enter into the court space, unfortunately, you become adversaries, right? It's like you versus the other person. So in order to be in that space, there's no way out of it other than to think who wins. It just is designed that way. And so what I like to share with people is to talk about then what are you going to win? right? So instead of going against the grain and explaining that you're not going to win, let's create a list of what do you win, right? And let's dive into that. Let's think about it. And I would encourage anyone who's in a high conflict separation, divorce, never married, but trying to figure out co-parenting, to really sit with themselves and create that list of, if I were to win, what does that look like? Paint that picture. I think that's important because it helps people come to a realization about not winning,
Right.
right? And that what do you win? I remember, and I've told this story before, being in this moment where I just kind of broke down as a young mother trying to figure out co-parenting, and in the midst of like a terrible argument with my son's father. And I remember pulling over to the side of the road in my car, and I was crying so bad I couldn't see. And I remember literally talking out loud to myself and telling myself to stop fighting, because what am I going to win?
Wow.
And in that moment, I realized, in not a dig to my son's father, I think he's an amazing man, but he was not a prize in that moment.
Right.
And it was just like, what am I fighting for? I'm fighting with him, and what do I win? And who really does win? And so when you get to that place, I think high conflict situations, thinking about what you win or don't,
Right.
being clear on that, creating that vision, and then also thinking about what does your child win if you continue at the rate you're going.
Right.
And those two things never match. And sometimes you have to kind of put those things on paper, say those things out loud to come to a realization and really kind of check yourself a little bit about what the priorities are.
Right.
So I would say whether or not it's doing that in a journal, whether or not it's doing it with a safe person who you can just kind of talk out loud with and let them kind of spit back at you what you've said. But sometimes you know what to do. You just need to hear yourself say it.
Right.
And we'd be surprised that once we hear ourselves say some things out loud, how foolish they are. Another thing that I do share with people, to say some of these things that you're heated or encouraged to say when you're trying to win,
Right.
say them to yourself in the mirror. And if you laugh or if you stutter and stumble, chances are you shouldn't say that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, let's get real with ourselves about this process of elimination and being clear about what battles to fight.
Right.
And so I go through this exercise in my book, like literally write everything down and now practice it.
Yeah.
Say it in the mirror. And you'll be surprised at how crazy sometimes you see yourself being.
Right. Right.
Hear yourself, right? Like you're looking at yourself like, okay, I'm going to say this, right?
Most of us aren't wanting to face ourselves off in the mirror and hear the hard truth, right?
Exactly. And so it's like, if you cannot have the courage to say all of that to yourself alone, with yourself in the mirror, leave that. And I'm so sorry, I should ask you because I curse.
That's okay.
So it's like, if you can't do that with you, leave that shit at home.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, you gotta just really be willing to get real.
Yeah.
And so I go through that. Another amazing thing that I was kind of gifted with, this idea of creating these family meeting cards.
I love that.
And I'm able to talk with couples through what it looks like to have a healthy conversation where your vested interest is not in the conversation.
Right.
Because it can't be. The cards are guiding you. You stick to the plan. And so you also can just use some tools to help you have conversations where you're not coming in with your own agenda.
Right. I like that. Yeah. I love the idea of the cards, to just let the cards dictate the conversation. And yeah, I love that. So I'm trying to understand, like, the price dynamic at your company.
Yes.
Like, is this private company? Do parents seek you out as individual coach, or is it like court appointed? How does
Yep.
it work? Like, how do
Yes.
people come to you?
Yes. So with the price dynamic, there are kind of three pillars, right? So we do one-on-one coaching, and that is really by self-referral. If you find us, you hear about it, you want to do coaching, you're interested in coaching as a single father, as a single mother, and or together as a couple, co-parenting, how to have some support in what your parenting agreement looks like, creating a parenting agreement, working through healing, coaching.
Okay, let me ask you a quick question based
Yeah,
on that. For someone that's listening, that's like,
yeah,
yeah, my ex is never going to come in together, but I want to come in and try to work out a parenting plan
yeah,
and see. Do you get a lot of people like that that are just like, help me
absolutely.
figure out, and then they go
Mhm.
back to the table with this sort of parenting plan?
Yep, yep,
I think
great
that's
question.
super important. And is that effective? Do you see that being effective in high conflict situations where someone comes into their ex and says, "Hey, I worked this out." How do you see that working often?
I do. I've seen it work in a couple of different ways. One, giving a person, kind of empowering them to have the right skills to enter a conversation. A lot of times you're dealing with maybe a narcissistic personality. You get flustered. You feel
Yeah.
like you have it together, and then you sit down and you're like, everything I thought I was going to do goes out
Yeah,
the
you
window,
forget it all. Yeah.
and now I'm triggered, and now I'm following,
Yeah. Now you're
this
reactive and
rabbit
yeah,
hole, right?
right.
So we're able through coaching to work with individual parents on what does that conversation look like. Let's role play. Let's practice that. Let's get an idea down on what you would like your parenting agreement to look like. And sometimes it's helpful for one person to have done some homework and to sit with us and do some coaching and present that without having someone else intervene, because that individual who's already kind of triggered and in this ready to do this fight um, puts up a wall and is defensive when you add other people into your dynamic,
Right.
right? So if you're like, we're not getting along, but I want you to go to this coach that I found.
Right.
Somehow people
Right
start,
away. I don't trust her. Yeah.
right away, they're on your side. You've
Right,
told
right, right.
everything. They're
You
neutral,
pay them.
right? And so what I have seen though, and this has been really awesome, is empowering the individual to then go and prepare themselves and show up as their best self
Hmm.
in this situation with the other person. And that other person starts to see the shift.
Right,
Like,
right.
wow, I can't trigger you.
Hmm.
It's not fun to tickle a person who doesn't laugh. So if you keep doing the work and you're showing up and this person is not triggering you, you're staying focused, you're clear about what you need for your child, I've noticed that the other party who was ready for the fight eventually comes around and says, okay, I'll go. I'll go meet the coach because this person somehow is helping you. You've transformed. I can't trigger you. So perhaps I should give up the fight.
Right.
And in the best case scenario, we've seen that happen. And we end up having somewhere between 5 to maybe 6 or 7 sessions with an individual. And then that person says, hey, next session, can I bring my co-parent?
Yeah.
And then it's just like, yes,
Yeah. Well, I always like to say if one person or one party unplugs, right? You stop
Yep,
giving life to that
absolutely.
negative energy, then it dies, right? So I always tell my
Absolutely.
clients, if you want something to die, you have to start breathing life into it. And yeah, you can control yourself. And like you said, when
Yep.
people are like, oh, or their ex is like, oh, she looks different, or what's going on, or what if she's not fighting me anymore? Okay,
Absolutely.
maybe this is working.
And the other thing through that coaching process, I've watched some people say, this situation is so high conflict, I just can't do it.
Mm.
I'm not in the place where I can co-parent. And then it's like, you know what? That's fine. Now let's create a plan that gives you the right type of support and helps to build up the village that you need to withstand where you're at right now, right? And
Okay.
so when you start to focus elsewhere, like I need to do what I need to do to
Right.
feel better and to heal and work on myself and not even think about the other
Right.
party right now.
Right.
That also creates this shift.
Okay.
And so we've
So
done
would
a lot.
that be considered like parallel parenting where
Yeah,
for the moment they're sort of putting the oxygen mask on
Mhm.
themselves and doing
Mhm.
what they need to do. Obviously, you can't control, right? There's a lot of women in my group that are not able to co-parent,
Yes.
unfortunately, because of the whatever the situation. And so I always say, well, that doesn't stop. You're still a parent, so you got to do your part, right, for your
Yep.
kids.
Yep. And so it creates a space where you're now parallel parenting with the biological parent, but we do talk about who else could you co-parent with,
Hmm.
and expanding the definition of co-parent,
I like
because it is really about two individuals that are taking on the responsibility for, making sure that child is safe and their well-being is intact. And you can do that with a host of people.
right,
We talked about, like, okay, if grandma is holding it down and she's there and helping you, let's talk about how grandma can step in.
right.
She can help you hold the belief right now.
Yeah, yeah, that's super important. I think, in my culture, in the Italian community, we are raised to control our children. Like
Yeah.
mothers are, we were like very controlling mothers, and we're raised in this ideology that no, you're mom and you don't let somebody else come in. And that didn't work for me. When, like you said, we had to invite other people in, loving people, and just you have to let go of that need to control, right? I think a lot of
Absolutely.
moms have this belief that you're going to lose your child, and
Hmm.
that fear you have to extract it, right? We have to just focus on the child. And is the child safe? Are they happy? Is the
Right.
environment that they're in safe? And if so, wonderful, right? You're doing your job. And it's okay to invite other people in, or new stepmom, new step parent,
Absolutely.
right? Because that creates more conflict of, oh, now somebody else is going to
Right.
parent my child. But as long as it's this loving
Yep.
situation and you're benefiting, we have to sort of switch out of that mindset, of that loss mindset.
For sure. So we do the coaching as one of the pillars. There's also group training and skill building, and that can look a number of different ways. And right now for us, that's professional development. And so we're working with organizations who serve this population, where they're primarily, their clientele is single parents,
Okay.
in underserved communities. I am a strong believer in there being a lot of bias, implicit bias, toward individuals who call themselves a single mother or a
Right.
single father. And so we tend to treat them differently, or put these kind of limitations on what they can handle or what type of support they might need. And so we're doing some professional development and coaching with individuals who support that community,
Awesome.
um, to engage them effectively and to retain them,
Mm.
and to respect them and ensure that they have their dignity intact when you're working with them. And then we also do supervised visitation, which is court ordered. Um, a lot of individuals hear about the price dynamic and then reach out to see if it's a good space for them for their supervised visitation. But we also receive referrals from our county and specific referees or judges, who are working in the family justice space. So,
Wow.
yeah.
What do you see? What are a couple of your biggest challenges that you see with co-parenting? Like, what are some of the top ones that pop up for you a lot of the time?
Right now, which it's at the forefront of my brain, we're dealing with a lot of high conflict around the supervised visitation.
Mm.
Right now, especially because of COVID, a lot of court cases were delayed. A lot of families are needing changes to parenting agreements and haven't been able to get support legally for those things. And so they're feeling really out of control,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, and what harm can happen for a parent who is living in the world right now during COVID, where we have to be 6 feet away from each other. There's no physical really contact. We're not hugging, we're not shaking hands. And by the way, you don't get to see your kid right now.
Wow.
That's just horrible, right? And so what I've noticed in those spaces right now, there's a lot of control happening with mothers,
Mm.
around what fathers can and can't do with their children during this time as it relates to safety. Some things that are very irrational,
Right.
and that's been really tough. Um, Also, I think the another really big thing is how child support is being spent is
Mhm.
another big question that we get a lot, where whomever is paying the child support has a grievance around how the dollars are being allocated, and are they going towards fun things for the other parent versus caring for the child. That's a huge one. Also, adding other um, spouses
Mhm.
to the dynamic is another really big one. Lots of parents wanting to control who is around their children or who gets to meet their children. So yeah, those are really,
Yeah. Yeah, everything going on with COVID. I mean, I've seen so many parents, especially in the very beginning when we really had no idea what was going on. It was scary. I mean, I had children that were going back and forth
yeah,
as well. And, my son wasn't even, he's in college, so he was away and
yeah,
had to come back. So there was so much uncertainty. And when you're not co-parenting, that causes a lot of stress and anxiety of, okay, where is my child safe? Where are you allowing them to go? Who are they spending time with? And the courts are not open, and they were not taking any, they're not taking any new cases. And
yep,
luckily, fortunately, my older ones, they're older, and so I can communicate. But I see, like, with the younger children, that's so difficult, because when
yeah,
you're not communicating and they're too young to really understand all this, right?
yes.
That's just causes so much anxiety. At it, when you guys are coaching, are you specifically just meeting the couple with where they're at right now, or are you digging back and healing maybe some of the baggage that they've carried into the co-parenting situation?
No, that's great. We do typically meet them kind of where they're at, what they're coming in with, but we're not afraid to ask tough questions. We do use motivational interviewing as a tool for supporting families and asking questions, and just huge on eliciting the best thinking of that person. And so, if that means diving back into and thinking about what relationships were that you saw, what was it like growing up, are you mirroring, things that you witnessed as a child. um, some of those conversations do happen. Now, I don't have a psychology background. I have a background in human services, family studies, been trained in family mediation, motivational interviewing, and just life experience as well. But we're not afraid to ask the questions that really help you to dig deeper. um, a lot of the mothers that I work with, of course, I encourage them to utilize It's Not Complicated as a guide.
Mm.
And in the guide, there are activities that walk you through, just kind of like, let's go back and think about what are the relationships that you saw, and
Right.
if you did not see any relationships, how do you think that has had an effect or an impact on your ability to co-parent or lack thereof.
Right.
And so it really serves as a tool and a journal to just really get a lot of that stuff out. And we've had some huge successes with people who have used the guide first,
Mm.
wrote all through it, and then come in and say, now I want to do coaching and I want to talk through these things,
Right.
um, or using it kind of simultaneously.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I know for sure from my own experience, I could use myself as an example, because, our divorce was in and out of the court systems for a few years,
Yeah.
and I just specifically remember this day of sitting outside the courtroom and just being like, how did I get here? Like, thinking, this is not the place that's going to heal me. Like, this is, like we said earlier, like, courts are designed for sort of winners and losers, so
Yeah.
to defend yourself, right? And so it's sort of intuitively, I knew, like, okay, this is the situation I'm in, but I need to, like, dig deeper here, because
Yes.
this is a tool, but it's not going to heal what's lingering beneath the core. And until I do that, this co-parenting is going to trigger me. And that's
Yep.
sort of what happened for several years until I realized, okay, there's some stuff lingering beneath the surface that I've drug into both of us. You know, we both sort of have this baggage. But you're really only responsible, like if somebody's not willing to come in or come up with a parenting plan, or I see a lot of people not sticking to the parenting plan, or even myself in the beginning being very rigid with a parenting plan and be like, well, this is this time and this time. And if you don't bring him this time, then like the anxiety hit through the roof, right? And then I realized, okay, Marisa, you need to chillax a little bit. Like as the kids get a little older, is this something you really want to fight about, right? Is this something you really want to give your power to? Because you're only going to get more of this energy if you keep fighting it. And so I learned I had to keep dialing it back in to where now my older, my son's 19, my daughter's almost 16, where I'm just like, okay, you want to go to your dad's, you want to come here, whatever. Like we live in this like very close to each other. So it's sort of easy, but when you do the work, like when you work with the co-parenting, when you come up with the plan, you have to just let it go at some point and just trust, that as long as your kids are taken care of and they're in good hands, just let it go. Like being rigid is going to cause a lot of friction.
For sure.
Right. And so it's
like anything in life that you really, I tell people this all the time, like anything in life that you care about, you work at.
Yeah.
You don't just say, oh, nope, it has to be this way. And that's it, know? So you have to continue to grow. The other thing is, I have a 17-year-old, and I have realized at each kind of fundamental like growth, these stages of his life have required a new part of me as a parent.
Right.
I cannot be the same mom that I was to him at 2 months old, right? Doting over him and checking on him every 2 seconds.
Right.
That he doesn't.
But a lot of people stay stuck in that, right? They don't want change because we're creatures of habit and we don't want things to change. And so we're so stuck on this very rigid ideology. And then the minute that those expectations aren't met, it's like all hell's going to break loose.
Yeah.
And so as they get older, you got to start changing that.
Yes. We do a lot with kind of challenging the individual to look at their parenting, to look at themselves, and spend so little time on what the other person is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that probably feels a little foreign and different in the beginning for people. But the more that we do that, the more I've noticed, mothers and fathers coming in and saying, hey, you know what, today, I don't want to talk about her or him. I just want to focus on me.
Right.
I want to talk about, I'm struggling with this. And we're willing to, follow their lead on that, because all of that is par for the course. Is helping them to navigate other things that may cause concern or be a trigger for them. And lo and behold, they then take that out on the person that they're no longer with anymore. So if we can figure out how that coworker is nagging you or bugging you, or talk through that, you won't suppress that at work and then go and cuss your your ex out,
right?
About something that's really small. It's like all connected,
I love that.
One other thing that's so important, I think that just being a woman, I know this, and other women struggle sometimes to be honest with themselves about it, is that when we have idle time and we're going through a breakup, a divorce, or whatever the case may be, we start to search for things. We pick at a lot of unnecessary stuff because we're not busy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As a mom, you're used to being busy. You're used to your day being full. And now all of a sudden, when you have to let the kids go for the weekend, or, dad is going to have them overnight, all of a sudden now you're sitting at home with nothing to do.
Right.
And you're dreaming up what could be going wrong.
Yep.
You're reminiscing on what they did that pissed you off from before. Yep. And it's like, okay, now with this coaching, you have an opportunity to start to plan.
Yeah.
What do I do in my alone time? How do I get back to who I am?
Yeah.
How do I realize, that I'm really the shit?
Yes, we are.
Yes. And that doesn't have to be tied to my identity as a mother. I am an individual.
Right. Well, I
And
think as moms, we forget, right? We totally forget. And that's such a beautiful point. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because so many of us are stuck on this label. Once we become mom, we're like, we forget we were a woman before we
yes,
became anything. Right. And so it's getting back to that and looking at this as an opportunity to reconnect to whoever that woman is. Right. And your children, they can't, it's needy to be dependent on them fulfilling your needs or for them to make you happy. That's not a job. Like, honestly, my divorce, the best thing that came out of it is the fact that I realized I set my children free. Like, I realized how needy and dependent I was on them, because the minute they started, they started going to get their own life, it was like, oh, wait, shit, they don't need me anymore. Like, what am I supposed to do with myself? And, I like what you said, because we sort of, when they're away at, dad's house, we're sort of looking for evidence on why they're miserable at dad's house. And I'll say this as an example. I would pick up my daughter. We would exchange at school on Monday. So Monday, I would get her at school. She would come in the car and just be totally stone cold silent. And I'm like, thinking in my head, like, what the hell happened at dad's house? Like, is something wrong? What happened? Are you not happy? I started creating this whole story in my head, and I kept throwing myself up on her. Like, what's wrong? Why aren't you talking? She was just like, whoa, like, I realized she just needed to settle in, right? In that transitional phase where it's awkward, any transitional phase. So she's adjusting, she's readjusting, but my ego was like, oh, something happened at dad's house. What's wrong? You're not telling me something. So
and even the mother need to fix things,
right?
It's like the realization sometimes that we create problems in order to fix them. Don't we have anything better to do with our time? Yes, it's like, so we can continue to have this identity, and instead of finding your new purpose, your new you, right? And so, I just love the work. I love, watching, especially mothers, which is why when I created this book, people say to me all the time, well, where's the book for men? Okay, well, first of all, I'm a woman and I'm a mother, and I had to speak to my girls first. And I didn't want to come off at all by creating something that assumed that I knew what a father is going through. I can, of course, relate and make assumptions as a parent, but I know what women are experiencing, and I understand that. And so it was important to me to start there. And I have a special place, of course, for mothers. And I think because I've been through a lot of crap, I'm able to connect and say that, trust me, what you're feeling and what you're experiencing, you're not alone. And I can challenge some of that crazy thinking because I've been there.
And that's the single most significant thing that I hear women say universally is they all feel alone, right? And me especially, at some point we all felt so alone and isolated, and we think we're the only ones going through this journey. And I think that serves a purpose. I think that we do have to sort of settle in at some point and reconnect back to ourselves and sort of isolate ourselves. Not to say that you should be alone, but to sort of connect inside yourself and to reconnect to what matters, which is our spirit and our truth. And I think that's beautiful. Like, your work, Alysha, in this world is beautiful. And I think that so many people, especially now, like, this is much needed, especially in co-parenting. I'm so grateful, first of all, that I even found you, because I'm like, I need to talk to her. I need her. And the world needs you, because I think it's still a challenge and will always be a challenge. And this isn't something that's just going to go away. And so I'm grateful that you're spreading the message and trying to, grab everyone's attention and let them know that it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't. We complicate it. It doesn't have to be complicated. So, and that's your book. It's not complicated. So you guys need to go out and get the book.
Yes, yes. Here it is.
There it is.
Like a copy.
Lovely cover. I love it. Go out and get the book. Start there, right? Like a lot of people, you're saying start there, read the book. If they
Yeah.
need to know, they can go. I'm going to put all your links. They can
Awesome.
get a price dynamic. If they want, I know a lot of people that have asked me, I know they've met, I don't know, like through the courts, I know they have people that work with co-parenting plans, but I'm glad I found you because I would love to refer lots of people. They all want to know, like, I need somebody to help me with this plan, and it's
And,
better than third party.
the thing that I love also, because people get paid, mediators, sometimes, to the tune of, $150 to $200 an hour to sit and listen to conflict.
Right.
And then also additional money in order to create a parenting plan based on what they've heard and kind of helping to negotiate some of those things. And while that is cheaper than a lawyer, there is also a way to create that plan for yourself and to have some coaching to talk through that.
Yeah.
And it could be just as beneficial. And when you create your own parenting plan, lots of times people don't even understand that you can still submit that in court. So if the two of you are able to come to an agreement and create a plan for yourself, and you may be, still, kind of doing this custody thing, but if you can come to an agreement together, you can get that plan notarized and submit that to the court.
And the courts would love you for it.
Yes.
Because you're not wasting the time. Right.
You save yourself time, you save yourself money, and you also save yourself from allowing the court to define your family.
Yes.
And that's the thing that I think people need to really, really understand and hear. Do you want an outside person who has no stake in the game, does not care about your child, doesn't know your kid's favorite song, what sport they play, what hurts their feelings, but they're making decisions about the amount of time that you are going to spend with your child,
right,
and what their upbringing looks like? And when you really hear somebody say that, it's kind of like, oh, I should probably get it together here.
Right. It needs to be personal. You don't want to be another file on somebody's desk. Like, the courts are inundated. I can't even imagine right now what it looks like. Like, worse than we could possibly imagine. That's why I think this is personal, and this is your children. Like, there's really no price tag that you can put on this sort of peace of mind to where you both can come to some agreement and both be happy with what this looks like. And then even like we said, as the children get older and needs change, you could always go back and look at that plan and see what's working and what's not working.
For sure.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to add to this and leave everybody with before?
I think majority of those that you work with or you coach are women, correct?
I do. I also coach just women as well.
Okay. So one thing that I think is really important that I love to share with women, I also talk about it a little bit in my book, is having your starting lineup. And so I call it the starting lineup, and you get to kind of do a little inventory, and it's a little space where you get to write out and gives kind of some descriptions and definitions of individuals that you might have in your life or who you could be looking for. And so we talk about kind of having the rational friend, the writer friend, the resourceful friend, the reinforcer friend, the realist, and the responder. And so when you get to go through and kind of read those definitions and think really strategically about who are those people that serve in those roles in your life, and you create your squad, you create your starting lineup. And this is how you attack all of these problems and these scenarios that come to you by having a plan.
Yeah, I love that.
You're never caught off guard because you've got your team.
Right.
And when you can't go into the game, right, you got your starting lineup. You got somebody there who that you can pass the baton to, pass the ball to, that can really be that voice of reason for you. And it also helps to alleviate that feeling of, I'm going through it by myself. Right. No one gets what I'm going through.
Yeah.
The other thing that's extremely important about having the starting lineup is you may have friends sometimes that have gone through divorce or a breakup that was horrible for them. And they can only speak to you from their experience. So when you're coming at this, kind of off the cuff, they may be giving you really, really bad advice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So if you want to do this well, plan ahead. Think about who your starting lineup is.
Yeah.
Think about who those people are that no matter how many times your mind changes, they're not going to judge you. They're going to accept you as who you are when you are. And those are some really key and fundamental things that help to move you through what this crazy world of, parenting is after this relationship.
Yeah.
I cannot stress enough how important it is to have your girls,
Yeah.
And maybe there's some guys in there too that could be a part of your starting lineup, but to have that core group that you can always lean on and rely on, that is so, so important.
Yeah, when I went through my divorce, I realized that I didn't have those people. My divorce was not accepted in my family. I lost a lot of friends.
Yeah.
So my family and many of my friends were not my allies. They were not my go-to people. It didn't mean they didn't love me.
Yep.
It just meant that they couldn't be my starting lineup.
Absolutely.
Right? So I had to go in and sort of do a detox.
Yes.
I had to get raw and real about, okay, these are not my people.
Yep.
I didn't have a lot of people, so I had to go find these
Yep.
people and these mentors or these people that I could trust. And if I didn't know them, I went out in the digital world and those people became my friends.
Yes.
And so you're right. I felt very alone because I didn't have anybody. And so you could either stay inside that victim story of, okay, I don't have anybody, or you can go out and find these people that are going to be on your team. And there's always people out there. And you're right. A lot of people, if it's hard because certain people don't get it, or they're coming in with their own experience or their own judgments, and those might not be your people, and you got to get real and honest with who you're having conversations with. So if you don't have anyone, get a coach.
Right.
Get mentors, right? Get a counselor.
Yes.
Reach out to people or someone in the digital world, or start taking in content that's going to start reprogramming your mind to get stronger, to invite this new energy into your life, to find the startup. Yes. So I love that. That is single-handedly one of the most important things you can do from day one, right? Like right away, do that today, get the book, start writing in your go-to people. Right now, I'm like dead serious. I didn't have a coach back then to tell me these things. I sort of had to figir it out until I end up hiring many coaches after that, once I started the work. But yeah, I mean, definitely that's a great tool for people to start like right now.
For sure.
So, thank you so much, Alysha. So you guys, if you want to reach out to her, I'm going to put all your Instagram links, your website, everything. I'm going to put all the links on here so they can go and find you, connect with you. If they need a parenting plan, or if they just have questions, right? They can just reach out to you directly.
For sure. I love it. And holidays are coming. So if you guys are interested in,
I need to get a pair of those. Yes. I will be getting some. I want to get some from you so I can do some giveaways. Those cards are great, right? Conversation starters, icebreakers.
Just like and they even can be used with the kids. So as the kids are older, they're able to sit down together and create a new family dynamic.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Yeah, and stocking stuffers as well. So there you go. There you go. Thank you so much again, Alysha. I really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Okay.
You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.